Welcome. This is not just a story. This is not just a biography. This is an emotional journey. This is the life of a man who made the world laugh, but lived in pain for years. This is the story of Jim Carrey, one of the greatest comedians and actors in the history of film, but also one of the most lonely, broken, and misunderstood human beings off screen. In this video, you will learn more than just the timeline of his life. You will learn what true suffering looks like, what real dedication feels like, what it takes to keep going when everything is falling apart. You will learn how a boy from a broken, poor Canadian family who once lived in a van became one of the most famous and highest-paid actors in the world. Not by luck, but by relentless belief, mental training, and emotional strength. This video will help you learn powerful life lessons from Jim Carrey's real story. Understand how to handle failure, depression, rejection, and identity crisis. Improve your English by listening to easy, clear storytelling in a real, emotional way. Train your brain to think clearly, feel deeply, and express powerfully in English. Because this story is told in simple, slow, clear English, it is perfect for English beginners and learners who want to improve their vocabulary, understanding, and listening power, while feeling something real. So sit back, listen carefully, feel everything, and get ready for a journey that might change your life. Part 1. The Boy Who Couldn't Afford to Dream. Jim Carrey's Childhood and Family Pain. Jim Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in a small town called Newmarket in Ontario, Canada. His full name is James Eugene Carrey. He was the youngest of 4 children in a lower-middle-class family. His father, Percy Carrey, was a musician and accountant. His mother, Kathleen Carey, was a homemaker who suffered from chronic illness and depression. From the outside, it looked like a normal family. But inside that house, there was a lot of emotional pain. His father was a talented saxophone player. He had dreams of becoming a professional jazz musician. But he gave up those dreams to support his family. He worked as an accountant. Even though Percy was funny, full of character, and talented, he never truly lived his dreams. This made a deep impression on young Jim. Jim once said something powerful about his father. "My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. So he made a safe choice. Instead, he became an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. That taught me something. You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love." That idea of taking a chance on your dream came from watching his father fail at the safe path. When Jim was around 12 years old, everything collapsed. His father lost his job, and suddenly, the family had no money. They went from living a simple but okay life to being homeless. Yes, Jim Carrey, the man who became a Hollywood star, was once homeless. The family had to live in a van for several months. Not a trailer, a van. They parked it near a relative's home. Sometimes they stayed in tents. There were no showers, no comfort, and no privacy. Jim and his brother worked as janitors at a factory to help their family survive. They would go to school during the day and clean toilets and floors at night. He was just a boy. But he didn't have the luxury to just be a kid. This was not a funny life. It was hard, dirty, and emotionally crushing. Jim started to develop anger, pain, and a deep need to escape. But he didn't escape with drugs or violence. He escaped with something else. While the outside world was difficult and painful, Jim discovered that inside himself, there was a strange kind of magic. He could make people laugh. He started doing funny faces, voices, and impressions. First for his sick mother, who was often depressed and lying in bed. She was his first audience. He would walk into her room and suddenly become someone else. A silly character, a monster, a news anchor, a politician. His mother would smile, then laugh harder. For a few minutes, her pain would disappear. Jim realized something powerful. If I can make her laugh, maybe I can make the world laugh. Maybe that's my superpower. At school, Jim was awkward, but he had one weapon. He could be anyone. He would stand in front of his class and do full comedy performances, even as a teenager. Teachers didn't know how to handle him. Some punished him. Others allowed him to perform at the end of class if he behaved during lessons. He started writing letters to the Carol Burnett Show, a famous comedy program, saying he wanted to be on their show. He was a dreamer, even when reality was hell. At age 15, Jim Carrey tried his first real stand-up performance at a comedy club in Toronto. It was a disaster. He froze on stage. He forgot his lines. Nobody laughed. He was humiliated. He walked off stage feeling like he had no talent at all. But that's when something important happened. Instead of quitting, he went back the next week. Then the next. Then the next. He started adjusting his performance, learning timing, studying great comedians, practicing new voices, new jokes, new ways to move his body. He failed. He failed again. Then slowly, he started to win. By age 17, he dropped out of school to become a full-time comedian. His family supported him, especially his father, who drove him to every comedy club gig. Imagine that. The same man who gave up his own dream was now helping his son chase his. This is one of the most famous moments in Jim Carrey's early life. In 1985, Jim was still struggling. He was doing comedy clubs, working hard, but not famous yet. One day, he drove up to Mulholland Drive, a beautiful hilltop in Los Angeles where rich people lived. He sat there, looking at the city lights below, and did something strange but powerful. He took out his checkbook, wrote himself a fake check for $10 million, and dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. He wrote in the memo, "For acting services rendered." He kept that check in his wallet for years. Every time he felt like giving up, he looked at it. And guess what? In 1994, 1 year before his deadline, he got paid $10 million for a movie called Dumb and Dumber. After years of struggle on stage, driving to small comedy clubs with his father, doing weird voices and characters in front of tiny audiences, Jim Carrey finally caught the attention of people in the television and film industry. At this time, he was still in Canada, but he had now started performing regularly in the United States. He was becoming known for his wild energy, elastic face, and unbelievable impressions. Nobody had ever seen someone like him before. He didn't just tell jokes. He became different people on stage. His face could twist and stretch like rubber. His body moved like a cartoon character. He had the timing of a master and the courage of a madman. Producers began to take notice. In 1984, Jim Carrey finally got his first leading role in a television series called The Duck Factory. It was a comedy show where he played a young animator, a cartoon artist who just joined a production studio that made animated shows. This was a small but important step. It gave him real experience in front of the camera. He was now a professional actor. But the show was not a success. It was canceled after one season. Jim was disappointed, but not destroyed. He kept going. He continued doing comedy, performing in small clubs, acting in small roles in films, and trying out for new opportunities. During this time, he also started appearing in movies like Once Bitten, 1985, a vampire comedy; Peggy Sue Got Married, 1986, a small role in a romantic time travel film; Earth Girls Are Easy, 1988, a weird sci-fi romantic comedy where Jim played a colorful alien. None of these roles made him a star, but they helped him learn, improve, and practice. Behind the scenes, Jim was not just acting, he was writing. He was developing characters. He was planning something bigger. And then, in the early 1990s, his entire life changed. In 1990, Jim Carrey was cast in a new television sketch comedy show called In Living Color. It was a show created by the Wayans brothers, and it featured mostly African-American comedians, actors, and dancers. It was fresh, loud, wild, and very different from anything else on television. Jim Carrey was the only white actor in the main cast. But he stood out instantly. He created unforgettable characters like Fire Marshal Bill, a terrifying fire safety officer with a burned face who gave dangerous advice in a scary voice; Vera DeMilo, a muscle-bound strange woman who was part of a parody of fitness shows; and many more bizarre, loud, over-the-top characters. Audiences couldn't believe what they were seeing. Who was this man? How could his face move like that? How could his energy be so high? How could he be so fearless? Jim Carrey was becoming a star, but not just a TV star. People started saying, this guy is going to be huge. He's going to be the next big thing. And they were right. The year 1994 is one of the most important years in Jim Carrey's life. In just 1 year, he released 3 massive Hollywood movies. 1. Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. 2. The Mask. 3. Dumb and Dumber. Let's look at each one and how they shaped his career. Ace Ventura. In February 1994, Ace Ventura hit theaters. Nobody expected much from this movie. It was a silly comedy about a strange private detective who only solved cases related to animals. But Jim Carrey exploded on screen. His energy, voice, physical movement, and wild comedy were unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. Audiences laughed so hard they couldn't breathe. The film became a surprise box office success, making over $100 million worldwide. Jim Carrey became a superstar overnight. This was the role that introduced the world to his madness, his genius, and his fearless performance style. But that was just the beginning. The Mask. Just 5 months later, in July 1994, Jim released The Mask, a movie that combined comedy, romance, action, and special effects. He played Stanley Ipkiss, a shy, awkward banker who finds a magical mask that turns him into a green-faced, confident, cartoon-like superhero. This film was perfect for Jim's style. It allowed him to become completely crazy, animated, and wild, just like his stage characters. But it also had a love story, a powerful message, and visually amazing effects. The movie was a massive hit, making over $350 million worldwide. Jim was now not just a comedian. He was a leading Hollywood actor. Also, this movie introduced the world to Cameron Diaz, who played the female lead. This was her first major film, and her chemistry with Jim was electric. Dumb and Dumber. Finally, in December 1994, Jim starred in Dumb and Dumber alongside Jeff Daniels. This movie was about two stupid but lovable friends who go on a crazy road trip across America. It was loud, ridiculous, and filled with unforgettable lines. And guess what? Jim Carrey was paid $10 million for this film, the exact amount he had written on his fake check years earlier. He had manifested his dream. He had reached the top. Now Jim Carrey was a household name. Everyone knew him. Everyone wanted to work with him. He was on magazine covers, talk shows, posters, billboards, and every cinema screen in the world. He had become the funniest man in Hollywood, and also the highest paid. But success came with a cost. While Jim's career was exploding, his personal life was falling apart. He had married a woman named Melissa Woomer in 1987. She was a waitress and actress. They had a daughter together, Jane Erin Carey, born in 1987. Jane would grow up to become a singer and later auditioned for American Idol. But Jim and Melissa's marriage was full of tension. As Jim became more famous, their relationship suffered. The pressure of Hollywood, constant media attention, and his wild career made it hard to have a normal family life. In 1995, they got divorced. This was deeply painful for Jim. He loved his daughter. He had tried to keep the family together, but fame had changed everything. Around this time, Jim started dating Lauren Holly, his co-star in Dumb and Dumber. They got married in 1996, but the marriage lasted less than a year. Another emotional failure. Jim was starting to understand that being a superstar was not the same as being happy. From the outside, Jim had everything. Money, fame, power, respect, millions of fans. But inside, he was beginning to feel empty. He was constantly performing, pretending, and being someone else. But who was he really? He once said, "I spent years playing characters. Then I realized I didn't know who I was anymore." He began struggling with depression. He would disappear from public life for weeks. He started reading spiritual books. He began questioning the meaning of fame, identity, and self. This was the beginning of a long, painful emotional journey that would define the next part of his life. But before that, Jim still had more characters to bring to life. Much more. Part 2. The mask comes off. Jim Carrey's search for meaning, identity, and truth. Studios offered him millions of dollars for every film. He was a guaranteed box office hit. Audiences laughed, cheered, and celebrated everything he did. But something had started to shift deep inside Jim's heart. He had achieved everything he once dreamed of: money, fame, freedom, recognition. But something still felt missing. The laughter of the world was not filling the emptiness inside his soul. He was starting to question everything. Why am I doing this? Who am I when the camera is off? Why do I feel so alone, even when everyone knows my name? These questions began to grow louder in his mind, and that's when Jim made a bold decision. He chose to take a new path. A path that was more serious, more emotional, and far more dangerous. In the late 1990s, Jim decided to take on serious roles. Roles that weren't just funny, but deep, dramatic, emotional, and philosophical. Many people in Hollywood were skeptical. They said, "Jim Carrey is a comedian. He can't do drama," but Jim didn't care. He wasn't doing it for them. He was doing it for himself, to explore his own truth, his own pain, and his own humanity. And that decision changed everything. In 1998, Jim starred in a film called The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir. This movie was not like his past work. It was calm, intelligent, and emotionally deep. He played a man named Truman Burbank, who lives a happy, peaceful life in a perfect town, until he slowly realizes that his entire life is fake. Everyone he knows is an actor. His wife is acting. His job is part of the show. He's the only real person living inside a giant television set, and millions of people are watching him every day without his knowledge. The story is about freedom, identity, control, and the search for truth. When audiences saw Jim Carrey in this role, they were shocked. He wasn't just funny. He was real. He was powerful. He was deep. The Truman Show was a huge success. Critics praised it, audiences cried, and Jim was nominated for Best Actor at the Golden Globes, which he won. This was his first major step into serious acting. And he nailed it. 1 year later, in 1999, Jim took on an even more difficult role. He played Andy Kaufman in a film called Man on the Moon, directed by Milos Forman. Andy Kaufman was a strange, brilliant, and mysterious comedian from the 1970s. He was known for confusing people, making them laugh one moment and cry the next. Nobody ever knew if Andy was serious or joking. He was like a magician of emotion. Jim didn't just act in this movie. He became Andy Kaufman. He used a technique called method acting, where an actor doesn't break character, even when the camera is off. That means, during filming, Jim was Andy all the time. On set, in his hotel, in interviews, in private conversations. It confused people. It frustrated the director. It annoyed his co-stars. But Jim believed it was the only way to truly become Andy. He even believed he was being possessed by Andy's spirit. This wasn't just acting. This was spiritual transformation. The movie was brilliant. It showed Jim's full acting power, his pain, and his obsession with identity. Again, he won a Golden Globe for Best Actor. But after the film, something strange happened. Jim felt lost. He had become someone else for so long, he no longer knew who Jim Carrey was. This began a deep psychological breakdown. In the early 2000s, Jim started stepping back from public life. He had reached the top, but he didn't feel like a winner. He began to struggle with depression. Some days, he couldn't get out of bed. Other days, he didn't want to talk to anyone. He started reading books on philosophy, consciousness, the ego, and spiritual awakening. He said in an interview, "I was depressed, but depression is not sadness. It's your body saying, I don't want to be this character anymore." He realized that for years he had been playing roles, not just in movies, but in life. He was trying to be the funny guy, the superstar, the nice guy, the charming guest on talk shows. But deep down, he didn't feel like himself. This emotional pain led him to question everything about life. Who am I? What is this world? Why are we here? He stopped chasing fame. He stopped trying to be liked. He started letting go of the identity that made him famous. During this time, he also began painting and writing. He created hundreds of pieces of art. Colorful, emotional, loud, strange. A way of expressing feelings he couldn't say with words. One of the most painful chapters of Jim's life came in 2015. Jim had been in an on and off relationship with a young Irish woman named Catriona White. She was a makeup artist. They met in 2012 and had a romantic connection. But their relationship was complicated. There were breakups, reunions, emotional fights, and deep misunderstandings. In September 2015, just a few days after they had broken up again, Catriona White died by suicide. She left a note. She mentioned Jim, and suddenly, his entire world collapsed. The media attacked him. Rumors began. Some people blamed him. Lawsuits were filed by her family. He had to face not only the loss of someone he cared about, but also the public pressure and judgment that came with it. Jim went into deep silence. For months, he disappeared from the public eye. He was now facing the darkest period of his life. In the years that followed, Jim began to speak about a powerful transformation happening inside him. He started saying things that confused people. In interviews, he said, "There is no Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is just a character I play." He began to study the works of Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, and non-duality philosophy. He spoke about the ego, the illusion of self, and the need to wake up from the idea of identity. People thought he had gone crazy, but he was not crazy. He was simply awakening. He said, "I used to be a guy who was just trying to become successful, get the girl, make the money, be special. But now I don't care, because I know none of that is real. What's real is this moment. What's real is love. What's real is peace." Jim was no longer trying to be anything. He had let go of the masks, not just in films, but in life. This new Jim was calm, clear, and deeply spiritual. He talked about energy, consciousness, and freedom from identity. Some people called it weird, others called it wise. But Jim didn't care what anyone thought. He had finally found peace, not in money, not in fame, not in awards, but in silence, awareness, and truth. He was not acting in new movies. He was not going to events or interviews. He stopped chasing film roles. He stopped playing characters. He stopped being Jim Carrey. For most people, this would be the end of their career. But for Jim, this was the beginning of a new life. One that was not based on being famous, being rich, or being accepted. It was based on finding out who he really was. And to do that, he had to lose everything he thought he was. For many years, Jim Carrey stayed away from the Hollywood spotlight. He didn't attend award shows. He didn't do interviews. He stopped appearing in major films. People thought he had retired. But he wasn't just hiding. He was healing. During this time, Jim began reading books on consciousness, philosophy, Buddhism, non-duality, and spiritual awakening. He listened to teachers like Eckhart Tolle and Alan Watts, who spoke about the illusion of ego and the false self. The idea that really touched Jim was this: you are not your thoughts. You are not your story. You are not your name. You are the awareness behind it. Jim started meditating every day. He spent hours in silence. He painted. He walked alone. He watched his thoughts without attaching to them. He stopped trying to be someone. He allowed himself to simply be. And this is when something extraordinary began to happen. During this quiet period, Jim Carrey found a new passion: painting. Not for galleries, not for money, not for approval. He painted to release emotion, to express truth, to scream silently through color and image. He built a giant art studio in his home and filled it with huge canvases. Some paintings were wild, some were political, some were spiritual, some were childlike, some were terrifying. It became his therapy. It became his prayer. It became his new voice. In 2017, a short documentary was released called Jim Carrey, I Needed Color. In it, Jim says, "I think what makes someone an artist is they make models of their inner life. They make something physically that represents what they feel inside. He also said, "Painting helps me bring out what I'm too afraid to say in words." His paintings became popular. They were shown in art galleries. People realized Jim Carrey wasn't just a comedian or actor. He was a true artist. In every sense, Jim Carrey began returning to public life slowly. But he wasn't the same man the world remembered. He looked different. He had a long gray beard, wore simple clothes, and spoke in a calm, slow voice. He no longer cared about fame. He no longer tried to impress people. Instead, he shared deep, strange, and powerful thoughts about life. At public events, reporters would ask him simple questions like, "Jim, what are you wearing tonight?" And he would respond with something completely unexpected. "None of this is real. There is no me. There are just things happening. We are not the stars of the show. We are just the light passing through it." These statements shocked people. Some said he had gone crazy. Others said he had become enlightened. But Jim didn't care what anyone thought anymore. He had seen the truth behind the curtain of fame. And now he wanted to help others see it too. Jim began to openly talk about depression, about the danger of building a fake identity, and the power of self-awareness. He said, "Depression is your avatar telling you it's tired of being the character you're playing." He encouraged people to step back from the false self they present to the world. He asked people to stop performing and start being real. He also became an advocate for mental health awareness. He spoke to students, universities, and young artists. His message was not, "Be famous." His message was, "Be free." He said, "I have no ambition anymore. I don't care what happens. I'm free. The only thing I do now is choose what feels honest and kind and true." After years of staying away from Hollywood, Jim returned to acting, but only for projects that felt meaningful. In 2018, he starred in a television series called Kidding, where he played a children's TV host named Jeff Piccirillo, also known as Mr. Pickles. The show was not comedy. It was painful, dark, emotional. A story about a man who teaches children happiness but is suffering deeply inside after losing his own child. The character mirrored Jim's own life. It was one of his most honest performances. Critics loved it. He also acted in Sonic the Hedgehog, 2020 and 2022, playing the role of the villain Dr. Robotnik. This role was more fun, more wild, and reminded people of the old Jim, full of energy and madness. But even while doing fun roles, Jim always stayed grounded. He didn't do press tours. He didn't play the Hollywood game. He just acted when he wanted to, and disappeared again when he needed silence. Jim began to share powerful speeches online, motivational talks at graduation ceremonies, conversations about the meaning of life, ideas about ego, fear, and creativity. One of his most famous speeches was at Maharishi University in 2014. There, he said, "So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying, I'm the proof. You can ask the universe for it." That speech went viral. Millions watched it. Young people said it changed their lives. In another moment, he said, "The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is." He was no longer just a comedian. He had become a philosopher, a teacher, a guide for lost souls. As of now, Jim Carrey is no longer active in Hollywood. In 2022, after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he said, "I have done enough. I am retiring from acting. I like my quiet life. He now lives a simple life. He paints, he writes, he reads, he walks in nature, he sits in silence. He is not chasing anything. He is not proving anything. He is not seeking attention. He is just being. Part 3. The Man Who Looked Beyond the Curtain. Jim Carrey's truth about death, love, God, and the real meaning of life. After years of silence, heartbreak, and intense inner transformation, Jim Carrey emerged not as a movie star or comedian, but as a messenger. He no longer wanted to entertain people. He wanted to wake them up. Wake them up from the illusion of fame. Wake them up from the trap of identity. Wake them up from the pain of being something they are not. And it started with the most personal part of his life. His daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, and the quiet bond that never broke. Jim had one child, a daughter named Jane Erin Carrey, born in 1987. He had her with his first wife, Melissa Womer, long before he became famous. When Jim's career exploded in the 1990s, he was constantly traveling, acting, and doing press. He was often away from home. The spotlight was shining on him, but his daughter was growing up mostly in the shadows. Jim admitted later that he made mistakes, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to balance it all. He said, "I was chasing success, not realizing that the greatest success is being present." As Jane grew older, she entered the music world. She became a singer-songwriter, soft-spoken but talented. In 2012, she auditioned for American Idol, not using her father's name for fame, but standing there as herself. Jim quietly supported her behind the scenes. He didn't give interviews. He didn't post photos. He simply let her have her moment, without his shadow covering her light. This told the world something powerful. Jim was learning to be a father, not a celebrity. And their relationship, once distant, began to deepen in private ways. Not in front of cameras, but in quiet conversations, gentle support, and deep respect. His thoughts on death, the one door we all must walk through. After losing Catriona White, Jim's understanding of death changed forever. He was no longer afraid of it. He said in one interview, "Catriona's passing didn't destroy me. It woke me up. It made me realize how temporary this whole game is. All the things we think are important, money, fame, approval, are dust." He began to talk openly about death as a transition, not an end. He read spiritual texts. He meditated on the mystery of life. He practiced detachment, not in a cold way, but with peace. He said, "The body dies, the mind fades, but the awareness remains. What you truly are is not your name, not your story. You are what watches all of it." He no longer tried to hold on to people, to roles, to achievements. He started letting go, moment by moment. He said he was learning to die before dying, to let go of ego while still alive. This philosophy made him more alive than ever. Because when you stop fearing death, you start living with pure honesty. His thoughts on God, not a man in the sky, but a light in all things. Jim grew up in a Catholic family. As a child, he prayed, went to church, and followed religion. But after the pain, loss, and awakening he experienced later in life, his idea of God changed completely. He no longer believed God was a man watching from the clouds. He believed God was everything. The energy behind every living thing, the stillness behind every thought, the love behind every face. He said, "God is not outside you. God is the space inside you. The silence, the peace, the awareness. That's God. This was not a belief system. It was something he felt deeply every day. When he painted, when he walked alone, when he breathed quietly and watched a leaf fall from a tree. He said, "We are all connected, not just people. Trees, animals, oceans, light, space. There is no separation." This made him more humble, more soft, and more loving. He stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" He started asking, "What is life trying to teach me?" And this changed everything. His view on love, beyond romance, toward compassion. Jim had experienced romantic love and also heartbreaking loss. He had been married. He had been divorced. He had lost someone to suicide. He had experienced passion, confusion, joy, betrayal, silence, and grief. But after years of reflection, he developed a new definition of love. He said, "Love is not ownership. Love is not control. Love is not performance. Love is presence. Love is acceptance." He believed the most powerful love is not between lovers. It is the love of seeing someone fully, without trying to fix them, change them, or use them. He also said, "You can't truly love someone else if you are still pretending to be someone you are not." This is why he stopped chasing relationships. He focused on building a relationship with his true self. Not the actor, not the celebrity, not the mask. And this led to a kind of freedom he had never known before. His thoughts on fame and money. The trap that almost took his soul. Jim Carrey became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood history. At his peak, he was making $20 million per film. He had private jets, luxury homes, VIP access to everything. But none of it brought real happiness. He once said, "I wish everyone could become rich and famous and get everything they ever dreamed of. So they would see that's not the answer." He called fame a drug, a temporary high that leaves you emptier each time. He said money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace. And success can build your image, but not your soul. He gave away large amounts of his wealth to charity. He stopped collecting things. He stopped playing the game. He said, "I don't need anything. I just need to be free from needing." And in that, he found the one thing he could never buy: freedom from wanting. The message to his fans: you don't have to be me to be free. As Jim began speaking in universities, interviews, and spiritual gatherings, he made something very clear. He was not trying to create followers. He didn't want people to become like him. He wanted people to become fully themselves. He said, "You don't have to go through what I went through. You don't need to become famous or lose everything to wake up. You just need to stop pretending. Stop performing. Stop trying to be enough. You already are." He encouraged young people to create art, not for money, but for meaning. To speak their truth, not for applause, but for honesty. To slow down, breathe, look within, and realize they are already complete. His current life, living in the light, one silent day at a time. Today, Jim Carrey lives in a peaceful home in California. He has no schedule. He wakes when the sun rises. He paints. He writes. He walks. He watches the clouds. He meditates. He laughs quietly to himself. He doesn't care about trends, fashion, social media, or public opinion. He cares about stillness, beauty, and truth. He acts only when he feels called. He appears only when the moment feels real. He is no longer on stage. He is fully in life. When asked if he's happy, he said, "I don't even use the word happy anymore. I prefer peaceful." Because happiness comes and goes. Peace stays. He has become a man of stillness. He meditates, he smiles, he breathes. He lets the world pass by like a gentle breeze through open windows. And yet, his impact is still everywhere. His legacy, what the world will remember. People remember Jim Carrey as the craziest comedian of his generation, the face of 1990s comedy, the actor who gave us laughter when we needed it most. But his true legacy is much deeper. He will be remembered as a man who spoke openly about depression, told the truth about fame's emptiness, reminded the world that identity is an illusion, inspired millions to look within, showed the power of letting go. He taught us that it's okay to be confused, feel lost, break down, stop pretending, start over, and finally, be nobody at all. Because in that space where you are nobody, you are finally free. Here are some of the most powerful things Jim said in his later life. Truths that have already changed lives around the world. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. I used to think I was a guy experiencing the world. Now I know I'm the world experiencing a guy. The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. I don't believe in hope. Hope is a beggar. Hope walks through fire and faith leaps over it. I'm not back. I'm just not gone. These words are not jokes. They are not lines from movies. They are truths spoken by a man who woke up from the dream. And those truths will live long after he is gone. What we can learn. The real reason. This story matters. You do not need to be Jim Carrey to walk his path. You do not need to be rich or famous to feel lost. You do not need to wear a mask on screen to understand what it's like to wear one in real life. We all wear masks. We all play roles. We all want to be liked. We all perform to survive. But what Jim Carrey's story teaches us is this. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to be yourself. You are enough, even when you're not trying to be. He showed us that true power is not in being everything. It's in being nothing at all and feeling peaceful in that silence. He showed us that peace is not something you find in the world. It's something you find when you stop looking for it. This is where the story of Jim Carrey ends. Not in a loud stadium, not in a dramatic final film, not in a tragic fall, but in a soft breath, in a quiet room, in a still mind, in a full heart. He came into the world as a poor boy from Canada. He became the face of laughter across the globe. He made millions smile. While hiding his own sadness, he broke, he cried, he questioned everything, and then he let it all go. And in that letting go, he found something that very few people on earth ever find. Real peace. This is not just a biography. This is an awakening. This is the story of a man who played every role and finally became himself. If this story touched your heart, if you felt something powerful today, if you learned something real, something true, something unforgettable, then don't leave without subscribing.